Hi everyone, and we are live here on Instagram, and at the same time we are recording for YouTube. And I have to say, today it's a bit improvised because I'm here at a wedding in Italy. So it's quite difficult, or was quite difficult, to find a place for me to do this live. So I'm sitting here in the room in my bed, and I hope that the quality is not too bad. Nevertheless, I didn't want to skip this live to answer your questions and to see where this is going. Cool. And I will go through the first question. The first question that I received was the difference in the business model of firms like MBB versus IT consulting firms. And the thing is that there isn't a huge difference between firms like McKinsey, BCG and Bain, or consulting or IT consultancies like Accenture, for example. So the business model of consulting in general is to sell the solution of problems, okay, and to sell project teams, okay, to provide workforce, and they sell typically the consulting team on a daily basis, and that's the business model from consultancies. And this doesn't differ a lot between those different type of consultancies, okay? So MBB, KPMG, also Accenture, all the tech firms, they have pretty much the same business model. But we have, or what we see in the market is that we have firms like Palantir or firms like Celonis. So those are firms who are in between. So their business model is that they sell software, but to sell the software, they provide consulting services. So what they typically do, like Celonis, for example, they want to sell the software, but what they do to sell the software is that they provide a team for a client, and this team actively tries to find use cases for process optimization. They really invest a lot upfront to discover potential, and afterwards they sell their license, okay, and that is obviously like a annual fee or something like that. And the thing is, and this is the big difference to normal and traditional consulting business models, is that those software companies, they have a huge upfront invest, but if they sell a license, obviously this is kind of very scalable and passive income, okay? So there are advantages, for the traditional business model. The advantages are certainly that you don't have a lot of risk because you only sell the time of the team, and you get the money if you sell the team. While on the other hand, the software companies, they have a huge upfront investment. But on the other hand, the consulting business model is not really scalable. So the only way to make more money is to sell more people, and it's really hard to scale. While on the other hand, in the software companies, they obviously can sell the license, and this is very, very scalable. So that's probably the biggest difference between those two business models that we see. And talking a little bit about the future, I could imagine that we will see more and more the second business model, so that consultancies move away from only selling people, going to a model where they also sell software, okay? And this is what I would expect to happen more and more during the next 10 years, so that the business model of consulting will also change in the future. Yeah, so what I said is the difference in the business models between like traditional consulting and software companies, and my hypothesis is that we will see that in traditional consulting more and more, that they also sell software. What I already see in the market is that, especially if consulting teams, for example, do large digitization projects, that they also have contracts with service providers or with software companies, that if the consulting team sells a certain solution, that they get a kind of commission. So for example, if you want to digitize the HR department, and one of your suggestions is that you implement a HR software, then I've seen that on projects that the consulting team or the consulting firm gets a commission, that they are in contract with a certain software provider. So that's one way. The other way is that consultancies sell their own software. So you see that, for example, the Big Four are very active in software production for accounting departments, for example, okay? This is on a recent project that I did. This was the case that we took a look at how to digitize the accounting department, and there are many solutions from the big four firms, and this is obviously another way, that if the consulting firms develop own software solutions, that they can easily upsell. And you see that as well with in the strategy sector like McKinsey, BCG. They also step more and more towards the software model, especially if we talk about data analysis and stuff like that. So I think this will be the direction that companies and consultancies either sell software if they do digitization projects, or particularly in terms of data analytics or specialized solution in a certain niche, also develop their own software so that they can or have a kind of diversification in their business model. So that's what I would see. Then Dede asks, why is the business model essential? Well, the business model is essential because this is the way how you make money. Okay, and I think for consultancies, the big question is how profitable or how sustainable is this business model, because it's not really scalable, and it's really, really tough. The consulting market is very, very competitive. It's very, very crowded at the moment. So there are many, many companies, and it's really hard, to be competitive. And it's also hard for some consultancies to be profitable. So I think, changing the business model is something that will become more and more relevant for consultancies during the next years, especially if we talk about, new technologies in the field of data analytics, in the field of AI. So I think, that consultancies probably have to rethink their business model in one way or the other. Maybe it's just an addition. I don't know if there's a complete disruption of the market. We will see. But I think, I just get the feeling that, there's something going on in the consulting industry, and, the consulting industry is ready for some change, but who knows in what direction this will be. Where's the best source that talks about the M&A process? You mean like the M&A process in general? So I would just do some research. I mean, the M&A process is quite simple, You first, say, okay, if you want to, you always have to ask yourself, are you on the buy side and the sell side? But the process is always the same. You say, okay, the company is for sale, or you do some research, if you want to acquire a company, and then, you make this public. Then you receive all the bidders, and they have to send a letter of intent. Then you get them access to the data room. Then they, can take a look at the data, can do their own valuations and analysis about the company. And then there's the final offer, and then it's the deal closing. And after that is the entire implementation. So that's kind of the standardized process if we talk about M&A. And it's pretty much, always the same. And those are very, very standardized projects, where I got recently asked on Instagram the difference between consulting, investment banking, and the legal side in those deals. And typically, as a consultant, you are there, to calculate a business case, to see what kind of synergies you can have, or what you can create, to also, be either on the sell side or on the buy side, and be the advisor for corporate finance. The investment bankers, they are typically responsible for the entire deal itself. Okay, so they really are part of the negotiation. They really try, to get the contacts. They also are very involved in, providing the important documents like presentations and valuations. And then the legal side is more for, doing the contracts and stuff like that. And that's what a typical M&A process usually looks like. Is an internship for 2 months too short? No. I think 8 weeks is more on the shorter side, but what you typically have in consulting is that you do internships for 8 to 12 weeks. So this is like the normal time that you have. So 2 months is 8 weeks, so that's more on the shorter side. But I think still it's okay. Would you mind talk about design thinking, please? Yes, but then you have to ask me a question. So design thinking is a method, to get to a solution in a very iterative and agile way. And I see that in consulting. So there's a book called Cracked It. I did a review on that on YouTube recently. And what I thought, was very interesting, that in that book they say that, you know, in the problem solving process itself in consulting, so as a team you solve problems, and there's either the I think there is the, they say like the issue tree driven approach, then the hypothesis driven approach, and the design thinking approach. And the design thinking, so you use the issue tree approach, you use the hypothesis driven approach if you already know what the problem is, and if you know or have an idea what the solution might be. Then you use the issue tree approach if you know what the problem is, or if you think you know what the problem is but you don't have the solution. And they use the design thinking approach, so a very agile approach, if you don't know the problem and don't know the solution. And I haven't really done it myself in a consulting context yet, although we have very often some you know, very agile approaches where we don't have like a typical waterfall project, but rather, you know, especially in digitization projects, that you really try to have an agile and iterative approach. But Dede, if you have any specific questions, then just write them in the chat. Savan asks, for a new startup, until what time period should the startup or should they generate cash? Well, the question is, if you, I mean, you should generate cash as soon as possible, because you need that as a proof for your business model. But if you mean until they are cash flow positive, so that's something different. It highly depends, you know. There are, I mean, like Amazon, for example, wasn't cash flow positive for like a decade or even longer, you know. So, and you know, only recently with Amazon Prime they became profitable and cash flow positive. On the other hand, you have many companies that you know, have a very positive cash flow from the very beginning. So it highly depends. I think there is no a rule for that. It highly depends on the sector. It highly depends on, you know, what kind of business model you want to do, what kind of problem you want to tackle, because there are just some problems, especially if we talk, you know, let's take SpaceX, for example. You know, it's a very research intensive, it's a very technical engineering intensive company, so they need to invest a lot of money at the beginning, you know. And you know, for those companies it takes a lot of time to become cash flow positive. While on the other hand, if you are in the service industry, for example, if you open a consulting business, then you should be cash flow positive, you know, from the very beginning, because you know, you don't have to do much product development and stuff like that. So it highly depends on the firm, on the business model, and the situation the company is in. Currently working at the Big Four, associate transformation, automation. Any tips? Well, my tips are basically, you know, if you want to make a career and if you want to become successful in your firm, then I think it's the most important thing to invest in yourself. Okay, this is something that I learned from the very beginning and very early on, that, you know, the investment in yourself is the best investment that you can do, and that you actively try to build skills. Okay, try to build basic consulting skills, like, you know, of course, like PowerPoint, Excel, but also communication, organization, you know, until you become project manager. That's where I am now. I now really try to learn how to sell, how to lead. I also try to develop a certain expertise in the field, so I try to read a lot of books. And you know, I think the most important thing that you can do, especially at the beginning of your career, is that you just, you know, develop this growth mindset, that you really invest in yourself and make, you know, improving, developing, growing, learning, acquiring skills, you know, that you make that really one of your highest priorities. And I think, you know, this is probably the most general advice that I can give to you. Additional question, does it make sense to go to MBB in the digital sector and start from scratch? Hard to say, it always depends. You know, my first question is always, if people ask me, you know, what they should do, is like, you know, what is your long-term goal? Are you in there, you know, to just, you know, for 2 years to get a brand on your CV? Are you in there, you know, for the long run because you want to make it partner? Are you there because you want to learn a certain or develop a certain expertise? Are you there because you want to found afterwards your startup? I don't know. Okay, so it highly depends. So think about what is your long-term goal that you have, and how would that next career move fit into your long-term vision? I think this is like the most important question. So if you can't tell me, you know, what your long-term vision is or what you want to achieve, Then I can, be more specific, about that question, if you should join MBB and go to the digital branches there. But, it highly depends on what you want to achieve in the long run. What is the best book that talks about how a startup B2B space could generate the fastest relationship with the buyers in the shortest amount of time? I think, From Zero to One, it's a book from Peter Thiel. This is probably a book that I really, really liked, because it really talks about, how to develop in a very structured and hypothesis-driven way, how to develop your startup idea, how to test your idea, how to create a product market fit. So I would probably recommend Zero to One. I think Blitzscaling, I don't know who wrote the book, to be honest, but this is also a very good book that helps you know how to scale very fast. And I would just, learn about sales. If you are asking about, building client relationships, then it's really important that you just learn how to sell, because, client relationships, no matter what we're talking about, if you talk about a tech startup or service industry, it doesn't matter, learning how to sell, especially as a startup, is so crucial. And there it's really about, basic psychology, sales methods. I think it's really important to know about these topics, or to learn about these topics, because this is at the core, of every business. It's the sales part. So as I said, it's probably Zero to One by Peter Thiel, then Blitzscaling, and then, as a third option, just read or learn about sales. And this is probably a very good way to get your startup as quickly as possible cash flow positive. Thanks, good luck with the wedding. Yes, thank you. It's not my wedding though. It's a friend of ours. They are marrying today. And we are here in Tuscany, so it's very beautiful. It's really hot, and we already had a kind of pre-party yesterday. So I'm a bit tired, to be honest, especially because we had a pretty tough week. And yeah, I have to get up on Monday at 4 in the morning to take the flight at 6 to get back on a project at 8. So it's really, really tough. And I mean, it's a lot of fun, those wedding parties, but, being a consultant and working 60 to 80 hours every week, it's also really, really tough if you don't get your weekend to get some sleep and to recover. But, well, that's my choice. Good. Then if you don't have any questions, I think I didn't forget anything here. Cool. Then thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for being with me. And we'll do the next live Q&A next week. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, then I do a lot of Q&As now in my stories. So just check out my stories. If you have any questions, then just write them and I will answer them. And with that being said, I wish you a very great weekend. Take some time to relax, enjoy the summer weekend, and hope to talk to you soon. Goodbye.